Asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, avirāvirmayeti, rudrayatte takshinam mukham, tena mam pahi nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So we have seen that the conches were blown, and at the request of Arjuna, the chariot has been brought in between the two armies. We have seen that Arjuna sees the people on the other side are his own people. That was in verse 30, we saw last time. न च शक्नोम्यवस्थातुं भ्रमतीव च मे मनः निमित्तानि च पश्यामि viparitani Keshava. O Keshava, I cannot stand upright. My mind is in a whirl and I see adverse omens. And in the next few verses, Arjuna then will give his reasoning of why he doesn't want to fight. We can go through it rather fast because this is the way Arjuna is seeing it, and many of the points that Arjuna brings up here will later come up in the study of the Gita, where Krishna then clarifies what terms are being used here, and in some cases even misused here, or how sometimes they are understood in a wrong way. So we'll go through this Arjuna's argument about why he doesn't want to fight. Verse 31. Nacha shreyo nupashyami hatva swajanamahave na kangshe vijayam Krishna nacha rajyam sukhani cha. Neither, O Krishna, do I see any good in killing these my own people in battle. I desire neither victory nor empire, nor yet pleasure. The key word in this verse is swajanam, my own people. This is not the first battle Arjuna was fighting. He was a well-known warrior of his time, arguably the best archer in the world of his time, and he had lived according to dharma. So it is very true when he says, I do not desire either victory nor empire, not yet pleasure, because every time, like a true Kshatriya, Arjuna and the Pandavas, they had fought in battles before. It was always for a good cause, the right cause. And so it was not just, we're just going to conquer just because we want to conquer, or we just want more power. That was never their intention. So that's true. But the first part, I don't see any good in killing these my own people. And this does raise a lot of questions. Should I not kill them because they are my own people? Or would I have killed them if they were not my own people? What about the people I had killed in earlier battles? I had no compunction in killing them because they were not my people. So, even in the earlier battles, Arjuna was trying to prevent adharma, fighting for a right cause. Even now, he came to the battlefield. It's not like he's thinking about it sitting at home, whether I should go or not. Preparing for this battle takes time, takes weeks, takes months. So there was a lot of time to think about the rightness or wrongness of this battle. So after all the preparations are done, the two armies are standing opposing each other, and contests have been blown, and now Arjuna is having these second thoughts, asking, well, how can I kill these my own people? But all the time when the preparation for the war was being done, when he came that morning, took a nice shower in the morning and came for the battlefield, he knew he was doing the right thing. And so the rightness of this war was never really the problem. So the problem is only my own people, swajanam. And so this question will also come later on in the Gita. Who are my people? You'll see the word personal pronoun being used quite often. My people. I'm confused. My duty. And so everything really starts with mine or I. And so Krishna will, as you, many of us, most of us, all of us, I imagine, know what is going to come. There is not a big mystery about what's going to come later. But because it's all about my people, my duty, my confusion, so Krishna's teaching begins in the second chapter with, who is this my that you're referring to? Who is this I? And that connection needs to be remembered. So he's very honest, very, very true when he says he doesn't desire victory nor empire or anything. His dilemma is only because the people on the other side are my people. And we wouldn't fault him. Any of us would hesitate doing that when we see someone known to us. That's why it's easy to be nasty. It's easy to think the worst about people whom we have never met or whom we don't know anything about. But the moment we develop some kind of a connection, we know some people, then it's not that easy to think worst about him. And that's something to be kept in mind. Sometimes in the world in which we live today, we find people just dismissing, oh, those are evil, they are terrible, they are like this, they are like that. A lot of times when people make such summary judgments about an entire class of people belonging to a specific religion or a nationality or color, a lot of times maybe they have never had that close connection with that group. And if we have not had a closer connection with a certain class or a group of people, it's a little bit easier to think the worst about them. But if you have some personal connections, then people are a little bit more careful in immediately jumping to conclusions. Verse 32 and 33. Kim no rajyena govinda, kim bhogair jivitena va, yeshamarthe kangshitam no, rajyam bhoga sukhani cha, taimeva sthita yuddhe, प्राणान् त्यक्त्वा धनानि च आचार्याः पितरः पुत्राः तथैव च पितामहाः मातुलाः श्वशुरा पौत्राः श्यालाः सम्बन्धिनस्तथा. Of what avail is dominion to us? Of what avail are pleasures and even life? O Govinda, for if for those sake it is desired that empire, enjoyment and pleasure should be ours, themselves stand here in battle, having renounced life and wealth, teachers, uncles, sons, and also grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, besides other kinsmen. You see how much the role of I is so central to our connection with the world. Again, let's keep on reminding ourselves, this is not the first time Arjuna is on a battlefield. even on the previous battles, the soldiers on the other side, the enemy that he met, the people that he killed, they were also somebody's son, somebody's husband, somebody's grandfathers. So it wasn't like they were just nameless, just individuals who had no connection. So all of these connection that he's seeing now, uncles, grandfathers, and all of that, this was true even in earlier battles. The only difference was those people were not my people, but these people are my people. So it does make a big difference. And that's why identity issues become very important, because all our connections are established through our identity. All our relationships are based on the identity. Here, Arjuna is able to identify with the people because of the relationship, because of who he was and his connection with them. He didn't have that kind of a connection in most of the battles he had fought earlier. And that's really the dilemma here. So he says, if the joys of victory, clearly if when someone is victorious, then it brings joy. And one would like to share that joy with one's own people. But now I'm fighting with these people. In order to be victorious, I have to kill these my own people. Then with whom will I be sharing this joy? 35. Etan na hantumichhami gnatopi madhusudana apitrailokya rajyasya hetov kim nu mahi krite. Even though these were to kill me, O slayer of Madhu, I could not wish to kill them, not even for the sake of dominion over the three worlds. How much less for the sake of the earth? So now is going a step further. Not only would I don't want to kill them, even if they were to kill me, I would still not raise my weapons against them. You see how much their identification, love for my own people can take someone to the point of saying, I'm ready to lay down my life, but I will not take their life. Verse 36. I wish at some point here, Krishna should have interrupted and said, why did you come to the battlefield? So it's interesting. I mean, sometimes it does happen. We have kind of prepared for some event, ready to go, and at last moment, we are troubled by doubts. Should I do this or should I not do this? That's the kind of a situation Arjuna is here now. 36. Nihatya dhartarashtraannaha ka priti syad janardana papameva shraye tasman hatvai etan tayinaha. What pleasure indeed could be ours, O Janardana, from killing these sons of Dhritarashtra. Sin only could take hold of us by the slaying of these felons. The word in Sanskrit here is atatayana. Atatayana means one who, the literal meaning of the word atatayana means one who sets fire to the houses of, administers poison to, falls upon with a sword on, steals the wealth, land, and wife of another person. And as we can know from the story of Mahabharata, Duryodhana did all of these to the Pandava brothers. He did set their house on fire when they were in the forest. He did all of those things. So the note in the book that I am following says, according to the Arthashastra, no sin is incurred by killing an Atatayan, even if he be thoroughly versed in the Vedanta. But Arjuna seems to argue, true, these may not be incurred, the particular sin of slaying one's own kith and kin by killing the sons of Dhritarashtra, inasmuch as they are Atatayans, but then the general sin of killing is sure to take hold of us, for the Dharmashastras, which is more authoritative than the Arthashastra, enjoins non-killing. So we won't go into too much technicality, but it's good to see sometimes these competing authorities that come. Making choices in life becomes difficult not when the choices are simple. It's if you have to choose between right and wrong, of course you're going to choose right. But many, or probably the most choices, are not as simple as choosing between right and wrong. Sometimes we might have 2 or 3 options, and we might say, well, I should be doing this because of this reason. But I should be doing this because of this reason. And the situation might be, I cannot choose both, or I cannot choose none. I have to choose one of these 2. In which case then, we have to decide. Make the choice of saying, well, both of these things need to be done, one according to this authority, this according to this authority, but I believe this authority is more important or more powerful. So I'm going to not do one duty, but I'm going to do the other duty because that duty has a greater weight, so to speak. And the example that comes in the Ramayana is this. You know the story when Rama is sent to forest, exile, and Bharat, the Kaikeyi's son, is set will be the king. But Bharat is not there when all this drama has occurred. When Bharat returns and sees what his mother and his father have decided, and by that time Rama and Sita, Lakshman have already gone to the forest. So Bharat says, no, I'm going to the forest and I'm going to bring Ram back because even he wants Rama to be the king. And there is this story that occurs in some versions of Ramayana when somebody quotes scriptures to him. You cannot do that because the Upanishads say, Matra Devo Bhava, Pitra Devo Bhava, that look upon your parents as an embodiment of the divine. They are the visible form. If they want something, obeying them is like obeying the divine. So, Matra Devo Bhava, Pitra Devo Bhava. And so by disobeying the wishes of your parents, you are actually going against the scriptures. So now, according to this, Bharata's duty is he should follow what his father and mother want him for him. Now then Bharata argues. Bharat says, he doesn't say the scriptures are wrong. He says, yes, the scriptures are right. But then he says, but who is my real father? Who is my real mother? And Bharat's argument is, I have had parents like Dashrath and Kaikeyi in every birth, and that's true. If we believe in rebirth, of course, every time we are born, we have parents. We don't have the same parents in every birth. So we get a new body in every birth. We also get a new set of parents. And so what Bharat is saying is, yes, the scripture is right. I have to follow my parent. My real parents as Ram and Sita. That God as father, God as mother doesn't change from birth to birth. So that's why the divine is our eternal father. In fact, I remember I studied in my high school and even college. I studied in a Catholic school run by the Jesuits. And the morning prayer that we had, it just began with that eternal father. It was very non-sectarian, but clearly the language was very biblical. So eternal Father. So Father, the Father who doesn't change from birth to birth, the Mother who doesn't change from birth to birth is God alone. So Bharat says, yes, the scripture is right. I will obey my father and mother, but my real father and mother and Ram and Sita. So I will go and do what they tell me to do. And that's what he did. So I just give this as an example to show sometimes these competing duties will come, and then we get to decide which authority to follow to. How do we interpret the authorities that are cited in order for us to carry out any duty? And that's what is being said here. That according to Artha Shastra and then Dharma Shastra, sometimes it's say, according to this book, this is my duty. According to the other book, that is my duty. And then I get to decide then which in this situation is more important. So what Arjuna's argument here is that these Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana and others have done terrible things. I know that the scriptures say that people who have done all these things, killing them is no sin. I know that. But on the other hand, I'm killing a human being. Now, killing another person is a sin. So now, should I follow this, which says killing a person is a sin, or killing this terrible person is not a sin? Which of these should I follow? And Arjuna feels it will be a sin. It will be not a right thing on my part to kill Duryodhana, even though he deserves to be killed. 37. Tasmannarha vayam hantum dhartarashtran swabandhavan swajanam hi katham hatva sukhinasyama madhava. Therefore, we ought not to kill our kindred, the sons of Dhritarashtra. For how could we, O Madhava, gain happiness by the slaying of our own kinsmen? Look at that word swajana has come again. My own people. So this word swa, the self, keeps on coming again and again. And that's why the Gita begins, when Krishna begins his teaching, he'll begin with the teaching of the self. Because that is where Arjuna is primarily confused. Verse 38 and 39. Yadyapyete na pashyanti lobho pahata chetasaha kulakshayakritam dosham mitradrohe cha patakam katham nat neyamasmabhihi papadasman nivartitum kulakshayakritam dosham prapashyadbhir janardana. Though these, with understanding overpowered by greed, see no evil due to decay of families and no sin in hostility to friends, why should we, O Janardana, who see clearly the evil due to the decay of families, not turn away from this sin? So his idea here is clearly that these Kauravas whom we are fighting, the consequences of the war are going to be terrible. They don't see these consequences. They are not thinking about it, or they are not thinking about correctly. But us, we are the good guys, we are the good people. We are able to see how terrible this is. So just because they are doing something wrong, should we do the same thing? Again, it's a good moral question that can become relevant in the times in which we live. If we, from our value system, decide that this is my idea of what is right, this is my idea of what is wrong. Now, in the circles in which we move, whether it's in a workplace or wherever, or among our friends or wherever we are moving, if we find that the people around us, their value system may be a little bit different from ours. Maybe we believe in complete honesty and truthfulness. But maybe at workplace, we find other people are not being so honest. They're not being so truthful. So in a way, that's a battle now. It's not really a battle with weapons, but clearly two different value systems. The people you are working with on a daily basis, you go there with the idea, I want to do it, be honest, truthful, good, helpful. And the people around, maybe they're willing to cheat, willing to lie, willing to do anything to move ahead. In that kind of a standoff, how would I deal in situations where, sometimes a lot of times one might say, well, they can be themselves. I'm going to be myself. I'm in my own little office doing my thing. They are doing their things. And there may not be any conflict. But there will be situations, if you're working together as a team, then it's not possible to remain detached, remain indifferent. You will be affected. And then the question would be, what shall I do? Just because they are cheating and lying and doing stuff, is it okay for me also to do it? Or I should just take a stand and say, I'm not going to do it. And sometimes it can be tricky, because sometimes it's the incentives may be, or the stakes may be very high. Maybe let's say you're working in a team, and then you maybe have to manipulate a certain data, or you might have to tell some lies, or do something not really honest. And then if you do that, maybe, I'm just kind of making up all the stories now. If you do that, maybe you get some big contract and your company flourishes and gets some benefits a lot. But if you are being too honest, being too good, then maybe someone else will get the contract and you lose. And that might affect your job as well. And that in such situation, it can be very tricky. Like one might say, and sometimes people do, that, well, everyone is lying, everyone does nowadays. If we don't do this, we're just going to lose. So, and it's not just me doing it, all people around me are doing it. And so it's okay, what can be done? That's one way. And that would be like, I'm then willing to compromise for the sake of some benefit in thereby. Or at least, at the very least, not, because if you are the only ones holding out, your team is going to get upset with you, your boss is going to get upset with you. And so I don't want any trouble. Let me just kind of go with the flow. Even though personally I don't like it, but what can be done? And so, again, I'm not saying one way or the other what we should do. But these are the kind of situations people come in life. And people have to decide. And that's what really Arjuna is saying here. That these Kauravas, they are not seeing the terrible consequences of war. But we are seeing it. Now, should we say that, oh, they are not seeing it, we also don't care? Or should we say, no, we believe this is wrong. In the process, even if they come and kill us, that's fine. And Duryodhana would have killed them. Duryodhana wouldn't say, okay, you're good guys, bye-bye, never meet again. He's going to kill them. He didn't want any trouble in the future as well. So that's where we are. Verse 40. Kulakshaye pranashyanti kuladharma sanatanaha dharme nashte kulam kritsnam adharmo bhibhavatyuta. On the decay of a family, the immemorial religious rites of that family die out. On the destruction of spirituality, impiety further overwhelms the whole of the family. in some sense, the family is the first social organism, you could say. And it's in some ways a microcosm of a larger community, a larger society. And so, how members in a family relate to each other. I mean, in fact, I would think that when we were little, when we were babies, we are not really, we don't even know a large world exists outside. For little children, their whole world is the family, really. And so a family becomes a kind of a training ground that even within a family, whether it's small or big, there are going to be people of different temperaments. There are going to be different ideas. So as a child is growing up in a family, you are kind of learning to live in an environment where there are a number of people. I'm not the only person with different ideas, and how to then negotiate these relationships to somehow live in harmony or chaos, understanding or not understanding, and so on. So if that smallest social unit called family, the society or community itself can be seen as a collection of families, which it is. And so the more harmony and understanding becomes a core value inside this smallest unit, and in more and more of such units in a society, then that will kind of bring that harmony and understanding in an entire society. So we kind of start first with the individual, that I need to find harmony within me. To the extent I have harmony inside me and other members of the family, there will be harmony in the family. And then if that unit increases in number, there will be harmony in a neighborhood, in a city, in a town, and so on. And that's how it is theoretically. It's good to understand how things work theoretically and how in practice things might be a little different. So what he's pointing out here is the decay of a family. We can see it. We don't have to go spend a lot of time on this, but it's kind of pretty obvious. We know that how much a family gets impacted when any member of the family, small or big, passes away. Especially, I mean, if usually, of course, we know that one day or the other, every one of us is going to die, and our grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, of course, they have gone. So we know this is the way life is. But when in the most unexpected circumstances, or what sometimes gets referred to as an untimely death, when some such loss occurs in a family, it's not just a number, just, oh, it's a big family, what does it matter if one person goes away? No, that's not true. The entire family is impacted by that. And we are talking about the events that occurred several thousand years ago. At that time, and not true today as well, there was so much, the family unit was much more, I would imagine, dependent on one another. There was much more close bonds. There wasn't this jet travel and be able to have this phone and internet. Now at least we have a kind of an illusion, at least, of just having a large family, how much followers you have, how much friends you have on a social platform. That may not be exactly identical with having real flesh and blood friends around us, but at least it gives a feeling like, oh, I'm a part of a larger group, even if it's a very virtual group. But none of that existed in those days. So it was really, the family unit was all that they had. And to the extent that there was these towns and villages, there wasn't this a larger sense of connection today we feel because of technology. And so any loss in a family meant a big deal. And what kept the family together was these different daily rituals they had. In the Vedic period, they had all this. Throughout the day was just kind of structured around these, what today we might say family traditions. Now, in an increasingly secularized atmosphere, all this may not feel like a big deal. Oh, because nowadays we go from place to place. Sometimes our work schedules are different, and we adapt ourselves to that. And we feel, well, that's just how life is. But if it is possible to think of how life may have been before. I mean, I was just thinking earlier today that some of us who are old enough to have grown up at a time when there were no personal computers, there was no internet, there were no cell phones, and lives just seemed fine. So it may be difficult for the younger generation to think of a world where there was none of these things. And once we kind of get used to these things now, we feel suddenly so helpless. If you have no Wi-Fi or if your phone stops working, you say, what am I going to do now? So times have changed clearly, obviously. Even within the last 30, 40 years. Now we're thinking about a time that was several thousand years ago. And so it may be a stretch to think, what was the value of these daily morning prayer, these little bit of rituals they had? How vital it was for the health of the family. And in a battle, when obviously there are going to be deaths and there are going to be families, children are going to be orphaned, women are going to be widowed, able-bodied, grown-up men and women are going to not return home someday. And that's going to completely upset the whole family schedule. And if these traditions don't get maintained, they're just lost. And we can see that even in fact, even in a very secular environment. Let's say that we have inherited a certain way of doing things in a workspace, in a secular space, that this is the way this particular work is done. And then we just then devise our own method and say, okay, all these years what these people were doing doesn't make sense. I'm just going to evolve a new method. And then maybe it works for me. And then when I have to train someone, I train them with this method, that new method that I have evolved. And it may be a great method, but perhaps my method may not be working all the time in every situation. But the method that was being followed earlier maybe lasted, say, for the last 20 years. And so what happens is, if the next person I train is with this new method, that person may be totally ignorant about this earlier method, which might have seemed a little old-fashioned, but which kind of lived for a longer time. And so then that workspace, that area, that old method can get lost if that's not being carried forward. Now that's I just said in a very secular situation, but think about the religious rituals. In certain family, let's say, that there is a certain kind of, they have inherited a certain kind of way of doing puja or prayer. Maybe that was how their grandfather did, and then that's how their father did. And now the son is so busy or is not interested and not able to do it, and then says, okay, just stops doing it. Now, when this son's children grow up, they have never seen it being done. So that means in that family, something that was maybe followed for generations earlier is no longer followed. And that's kind of, once it's lost, is usually lost forever. Because at least now we might say, oh, my grandfather kept a diary, he had this, he has taken a video of what he used to do, So maybe in 2 generations they didn't do it. You can kind of look at these old videos and maybe try to reconnect with the family tradition. Maybe sometimes it could happen. But they didn't have any of those things in those days. And so once something is lost, it's lost. And that's why there is much thing about these family traditions being lost. 41. Adharmabhibhavat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriyah strishu dushtasu varshneya jayate varna sankaraha. On the prevalence of impiety, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt, and women being corrupted, there arises a varshneya, intermingling of castes. Now, there is the word about varna and the translation in many books as caste is a little bit problematic. But later on, in the 3rd and 4th chapter, Krishna will return to this idea of varna and jati, and we will have more opportunity to discuss it that time. But enough here to recognize that we've seen this before, in times of battle, when people die, the families lose their stability. And as the weapons of war, so to speak, as true then as it is now, when enemies invaded, oftentimes women and children become the first victims. And one of the reasons in the Vedic period, women and men studied together, all the Vedas. But after these intruders from across the border started pouring into India, the first thing that they did was protection of women, because they are the ones to bring the next generation. If your family and the tradition is to continue. And that's when then the women, as they say, were sent to the inner apartments to protect them. And then when that something continues for centuries, then that itself becomes a tradition. And so a lot of these are results not of some big conspiracy, but oftentimes just the historical accidents that occurred due to these kind of events such as attacks and aggression and so on. One example comes to my mind from Swami Vivekananda's life as well. When he had graduated, in fact, was studying for his law school, his father passed away. And his father was a well-to-do person, but he never thought of having some big savings and having a big retirement fund and providing for having a life insurance that if I die, my family will be able to survive. Nothing was there. He was generous to a fault. So he helped all of these, the larger extended family, the relatives and so on, whenever they needed money, he gave them. But when he died, rather than these people around who had received so much benefit, they could have come. Here is this mother of Vivekananda. She wasn't a lawyer or anything. She wasn't hardly gone to school. And there's these 3 children, little children. And so the relatives who had received so much benefit, they could have gone and helped this poor helpless family who had just lost the one earning member of their family. And they didn't do that. What did they do? They tried to take away their property. They filed lawsuits and somehow get and take hold of as much of things as possible. And this is just because this is a famous person we are talking about. It is recorded in their lives and we know about this. But similar situations can occur in countless households. Now, this is not to give a very cynical take on it. It's not like everybody will do it. There will be, of course, there are also good people who might want to be helpful. But there are also these kind of people who want to take advantage of the helplessness of the other person and stand to benefit by themselves. And the Kauravas are of that kind. 42. Sankaro narakayaiva kulagnanam kulasya cha patanti pitaro yesham lupta pindodaka kriyaha. Admixture of castes indeed is for the hell of the family and the destroyers of the family, and their ancestors fall deprived of the offerings of rice, ball, and water. So this Varna Sankara, to kind of very briefly, and we'll discuss it further later on, is not the way it is often translated. Because if you look at the Mahabharata story, Varna Sankara is kind of pretty common, not necessarily during only battles. A lot of these major characters who were born in Mahabharata, many of them were not born in a normal sort of way. There's already Varna Sankara. In fact, even Dhritarashtra and Pandu and others, they, according to the laws prevalent, social laws prevalent in those days, oftentimes they were fathered by Vyasa. So there are many instances in Mahabharata which was accepted by the society as a traditional way of perpetuating a family line. There were many. It was already Brahmins and Kshatriyas. It wasn't like a watertight compartments. So Varna Sankara in that sense was not unusual in those days. So what is meant here is that it is the duty, that duties get mixed up, that what my responsibilities are and what the change circumstances change everything, and those are that confusion about duty is really what Varna Sankara is about. And again, this idea will be discussed further in the Gita when they talk about Swadharma and Paradharma. We'll come to that time. He also says about Lupta Pindodaka Kriyaha. Pinda literally means an individual. And Udaka literally means water, but here it stands for respect, a mutual understanding. So, and the word that gets ritually, it's called Shraddha. And you can see how similarity with the word Shraddha, faith and respect and understanding. So there is this tradition as far as the rituals are concerned, that making offerings, doing rituals to one's own ancestors. And there is a belief that what you offer in that ritual, in a very subtle form, goes to one's ancestors. And they live in this subtle realm called Pitruloka, where all the past ancestors live until the time they are reborn again. So it's kind of a holding area until they are born again. So now, even when they are in the holding area, they have to eat something. They have a body. You can never be without a body. And of course, maybe they'll get some general food there, something on the menu. But they are our own people. They are our own father, mother, grandfather, grandmother. Those who maybe we were there on their lap when we were little babies. They took so much care of us. Now they are in this subtle realm. Can we not do something for them? And so that's how this ritual or Shraddha really is, that all the offering that is made and that done in a specific way, that ritual called Shraddha, the subtle form, it's Agni, fire, that carries this and offers it to the ancestors. So that's a way of, once again, establishing one's relationship, that after people die, they're not just gone and vanished into nothingness, that they still continue to be. They still continue to bless us, continue to help us, to guide us, and we who are still on this plane continue to express our gratitude to them. Now, in a family, in a war, when people die, and there is nobody left in the family, then to do these rituals, then those ancestors who are waiting, today the DoorDash hasn't showed up. And you say, well, there is nobody now to deliver. I'm just kind of making light of it, but that's the idea, that then this tradition. Now, cynics are there. They say, it's so difficult to believe. You're doing some puja here, some ritual here, and that its subtle form, it's going there. How do you know it really goes there? What evidence is there? And the answer to that is, well, if you don't believe in it, don't do it. It's not a question of evidence. One visible evidence is that when it is done, your connection that we make, that sense, a heart filled with gratitude, a heart filled with love, a tendency of the mind not to forget people who have helped us. That's important. Because if I'm trained to just say, these people did for me, I don't have to recognize them, I don't have to remember them, then we don't get a different mind for that. Then I'll carry on the same tendency to the people who are with me now. If I'm not grateful to my grandfather or great-grandfather for whatever connection I might have had with them, why will I suddenly be grateful to people around me? And so that's the visible effect. About the invisible effect, cynics may not believe it. People who believe will believe it. But we can see a very tangible effect in the mindset of the people who follow these traditions. And what Arjuna is saying here is that war kind of breaks all the structures. And all these things will end. All these things will stop. So there is this visible effect of war, and that is people dead or people even injured. And oftentimes, when we read the news, those are the only numbers that come. Oh, there was this bomb, and that's happening today. In the Middle East or in Ukraine, that's what we read. This bomb was put, so many people died, so many people are injured, and so on. It's heartbreaking, it's terrible. But again, what the newspapers record are these visible things, death and injury. And occasionally you might see an article, or occasionally some reporter might want to go and interview people who didn't die, who went to war, who were not injured, but are they still sane? A lot of the veterans who were interviewed later on, there are these very subtle, when he's suffering from PTSD, a lot of people who have seen this death and blood, it's just not possible to come back to civil life and pretend as if, oh, it's life as usual. No, something has changed. And sometimes in a very, it's very hurting. But one is not able to put a finger on it and say, this is what has happened. So there are these invisible costs of war. And that is to be remembered here as well. (43) Doshairetai kulagnanam varna sankara karakaihi utsadyante jati dharmaha kula dharmascha shashvataha. By these misdeeds of the destroyers of the family, bringing about confusion of castes, are the immemorial religious rights of the caste and the family destroyed. 44. Utsanna kuladharmanam manushyanam janardana narake niyatam vaso bhavatityanushruma. We have heard, O Janardana, that dwelling in hell is inevitable for those men in whose families religious practices have been destroyed. 45. Aho batamahat papam kartum vyavasita vayam yat rajya sukhalobhena hantum swajana mudyataha. Once again, a swajana has come. You can see repeatedly how often the word swajana comes here. My own people, my own people. Alas, we are involved in a great sin in that we are prepared to slay our own people out of greed for the pleasures for a kingdom. Again, a lot of confusion here. Just earlier, few verses before, Arjuna had said, I don't want the kingdom, I'm not doing it. And that's true, he didn't want it. But now to kind of bolster his argument, he says, oh, we are going to create such a sin. Just to kind of give one short example. Think about, yes, ahimsa. You should not hurt anybody. You should treat everybody with love. Now, let's say you're going for a walk, and then you find from the other side there is one elderly person coming, and somebody else goes and attacks that elderly person and is hurting her. What is my duty? Should I then say, ahimsa, I cannot go and hurt? Of course, you can try to go and tell peacefully to that person, don't hurt this. Most likely it's not going to work. If you really want to protect that elderly person, you have to land a few blows on this person who's doing it. So at that situation, what is my duty? Himsa or ahimsa? And that's where the dilemma here is. That yes, what Arjuna is saying, a lot of these things are true. But Arjuna is about to say, and what he has said so far is, if I continue, if I fight this battle, I will be violating dharma. And it seems to us, those of us now, in retrospect, will be look at the situation, that no, that is the confusion. You are not going to violate dharma by going to this war. In fact, you came to this battle to protect dharma. It was Duryodhana who was violating dharma. And so if someone who is violating dharma, you have to go to battle and even destroy him in order to protect dharma, you're not doing anything wrong. That is not papa. So that's really thing. And of course, to add it to that is this problem about swajana, my own people. That's what Arjuna is hampering on. 46. Yadimam apratikaram ashastram shastrapanayah dhartarashtrarane hanyuh tanme kshemataram bhavet. Verily, if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to slay me, unresisting and unarmed in the battle, that would be better for me. Not going to happen. Sanjaya Vacha. Eva muktvarjunas sankhye rathopastha upavishat visrujya sasharam chapam shoka samvikna manasaha. Sanjaya said, speaking thus in the midst of the battlefield, Arjuna, casting away his bow and arrow, sank down on the seat of his chariot with his mind distressed with sorrow. Iti Arjuna Vishada Yogo Nama Prathamodhyaya. So he says, I'm not going to fight, and just sits down, his mind filled with sorrow. And that's why this first chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. The yoga of Arjuna's Vishada, Arjuna's grief, Arjuna's sorrow. And as we will see in the next class, how this sorrow, this profound grief, this profound Vishada became a doorway opening Arjuna to a higher truth, a higher reality, giving him that clarity of mind so he could see and decide that in this situation, what is the right thing for me to do. So it's a little bit late, so we just have maybe another 5 or 6 minutes to have a quick, some questions that you might have. Yeah.
Hariom Swamiji. Swamiji, Arjuna needed to be at battle, and in your example of the worker had to be confronted with a lie or deceit. Both of these are dramatic events. So can we have realization, and both of them led them to a realization to think of what should we do. Can we have realization in our ordinary life, or must we find these dramatic events for us to really wake up? Dramatic event meaning a question, a moment at which we have to decide one way or the other.
I think small and big decisions we all have to make in life, but I'm not sure about whether it has to be dramatic in every case. Because I think in some cases, the awakening to spiritual life can come through really some cataclysmic event. And in some cases, it might be very gradual. And so I think it could go either way. Yeah.
Swamiji, follow-up question what Bikram asked, that dramatic, what I feel like, even Kunti said that when we have problem, God is with us. So when life is going really good, we don't think about anything. But when something sad, dramatic happens, then we realize, because that time we sit down and think about what is right. And your many Sunday lecture, you have said that you need to sit down and think about what's right now. So that in that sense, is it necessary for us to have that kind of event occur in our life to realize God?
God. Yeah, good point. I think it just depends on our perception. What is dramatic and not dramatic will depend on. I mean, it's possible to argue that it's dramatic right now, in the sense that if what the scriptures say is true, that I'm this infinite reality, birthless and deathless, pure and perfect, and I find myself now like this ordinary human being, mortal, afraid, not knowing anything about the future. And that's pretty dramatic. It's like I've already lost what my true nature is. Now, if I'm too preoccupied with other concerns in life, then I may not have the time and the privilege then to even think about this. But if we think about it, it's already on. And of course, as I said, many of us may discover these kind of conflicts between our values and the values of people around us. Though it also could be a dramatic way for us to look within and say, what is it that I should be doing? How should I be doing it? What are the kind of compromises I can make, or what are the kind of compromises I should not make? So we have a lot of opportunities in life. If we only look and kind of pause a little bit, look at our life objectively, we might find that there are a lot of already existing conflicts we can take care of. We don't need to go in search of more conflicts. There are already things that are going on. And I think we don't have to immediately wait for something very dramatic. We can take baby steps. Some of these smaller dilemmas, we'd say, which are not going to have some big effects in life, but smaller things like, should I do this or should I do that? How often am I able to devise a method of solving my dilemmas, of deciding that this is the kind of a rule I make for myself? If I have 3 options to choose from, what rule do I follow in deciding this is the option that I'm going to do? Do I have any system to make that decision? Or is it just changes by day to day, or what my mood is, or is there something more stable for me as a reference point? So if you begin to think like this, I think it can be pretty exciting, because it's just as when you read a new book or get some new gadget, and then you'll find, oh, it can do this, or this is like this, I didn't know this before. That can be exciting. But looking at ourselves and discovering things about ourselves we didn't know can be even more exciting. Because everything else in the world, all the people in the world, we may be with them for some time we may be away, sometimes away, and so on. There's this one person in the world I'm never away from, and that's me. I can never get away from myself. And so it makes sense, like, if I'm going to live with myself, I better get to know myself well. There's no point in knowing what's happening in a distant galaxy and having no idea what's going on inside. And that's the point. So one last question and then we stop.
Carrying forward the traditions of the family and, traditions getting lost. Mostly it has got, people think of utility. And utility may be, money may be more important and, traditions are getting lost. Like these traditions of whatever, wisdom has come from the rishis who devised Upanishads say. So we are comparing, we are impressed by the people like sitting in Harvard and writing papers and, winning awards.
So what's the point you're making?
The point I am trying to make is the family traditions, they need to be carried forward. That is the whole, whatever disturbances are there in the world. To my mind, they are because, families have not, children have to be born.
Got that point, but what exactly you want to say? Yes, people should continue the tradition. I agree with you.
The traditions are old wisdom has some value and that has to be realized.
Right. That's true. Yeah, we said that it's important, but war sometimes... Yeah, please sit down.
Yeah, one thing, like last time, the sister, she said, I don't like the word duty. Duty is dharma, as per the scriptures. So we can't say we don't like to use because it is getting lost in the translation.
No. People are free to say what they like, they don't like, and that's why we are having a discussion here. Yeah. So we'll continue next week. We will start the second chapter of the Gita. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu.